On the morning of September 29, 1982, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up in her suburban Chicago home, feeling under the weather with a sore throat and a slight fever. Her parents gave her a single, extra-strength Tylenol capsule from a bottle sitting in their medicine cabinet. Within minutes, Mary collapsed on the bathroom floor. By sunrise, she was dead. Hours later, in a neighboring town, a 27-year-old postal worker named Adam Janus suddenly collapsed and died of what doctors initially assumed was a massive heart attack. As his grieving family gathered at his house that evening, his brother Stanley and sister-in-law Teresa, suffering from crushing headaches, reached into a fresh bottle of extra-strength Tylenol on the kitchen counter. Stanley died that night. Teresa died 2 days later. Before the week was over, 7 innocent people across the Chicago area were dead, struck down in their own homes by the exact same everyday household pain reliever. The killer wasn't using a gun, a knife, or a visible weapon. They were operating in total stealth, walking into local grocery stores and pharmacies, placing laced bottles on store shelves, and waiting for unsuspecting victims to buy them. The 1982 Tylenol murders triggered unprecedented mass paranoia across the United States. It destroyed consumer trust overnight, birthed the tamper-evident packaging we use today, and launched one of the largest FBI manhunts in American history. Tonight, we step back into the autumn of 1982 to explore an unsolved phantom crime that changed modern society forever. Welcome to Midnight Mysteries. Are you ready to look inside the bottle? When 7 people die suddenly in the same metropolitan area within 48 hours, health officials usually look for a chemical leak or a localized viral outbreak. But the connections between the Chicago deaths made no sense at all. The victims were spread across different suburbs: Elk Grove Village, Arlington Heights, Winfield, and Chicago itself. They ranged from a 12-year-old schoolgirl to a 35-year-old flight attendant. They had never met, shared no common friends, and worked in completely different industries. The breakthrough came from 2 off-duty firefighters in suburban Arlington Heights, Philip Capitelli and Richard Keyworth. While discussing the strange deaths of the Janus family over their radios, they noticed a bizarre detail. Both locations contained a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol with the exact same lot number, MC2880. Police investigators rushed to the homes of the victims to seize the medication bottles. When toxicologists opened the red and white capsules, they immediately noticed a bitter, almond-like odor lingering in the plastic containers. The lab tests revealed a horrifying reality. The capsules were packed with lethal doses of potassium cyanide, a chemical so toxic that a single grain can stop human cellular respiration in seconds. The killer had carefully pulled open the gelatin capsules, replaced the white pain relief powder with deadly cyanide, snapped the capsules back together, and returned the bottles to store shelves. By October 1st, a full-blown national emergency was declared. Police cruisers drove through Chicago neighborhoods using loudspeakers, screaming at residents, "Do not take Tylenol. Dispose of your bottles immediately." Hospital emergency rooms were overwhelmed with thousands of terrified citizens convinced they had been poisoned. The poisoning sent shockwaves through the global business community and the federal government. At the time, Tylenol made up 35% of the entire over-the-counter pain reliever market in the United States, generating hundreds of millions of dollars for its parent company, Johnson & Johnson. Inside corporate headquarters, executives faced an existential choice: minimize the financial damage or pull everything. Johnson & Johnson CEO James Burke made a historic decision. He ordered an immediate total recall of 31 million bottles of Tylenol nationwide, with a retail value exceeding $100 million in 1982 dollars. The company halted all production and television advertising, offering a $100,000 reward for the killer's capture. As federal agents swept through stores in Illinois, they discovered 5 more poisoned bottles sitting unsold on store shelves, waiting like silent landmines for the next customer. Then came the extortion letter. Days after the murders made global headlines, Johnson & Johnson received a handwritten, chilling letter. The writer claimed responsibility for the poisonings and demanded $1 million deposited into a bank account to stop the killings. FBI agents traced the bank account listed in the letter to a defunct travel agency, leading them straight to a man named James William Lewis. Lewis was a dark, erratic figure with a history of fraud and shady financial dealings. When federal agents raided his home, they found books on chemistry, poison, and lethal compounds. The FBI launched a massive nationwide manhunt for Lewis. He was captured in New York City months later. However, during intense interrogations, investigators hit a major legal roadblock. While Lewis had undeniably written the extortion letter to exploit the crisis for money, there was no physical proof placing him in Chicago when the bottles were actually poisoned. Lewis was convicted of extortion and spent 13 years in federal prison, maintaining until his death that he was merely an opportunist extortionist, not the killer. If James William Lewis wasn't the Tylenol poisoner, who was? Over the years, the FBI task force investigated thousands of leads and interviewed over 400 suspects, uncovering a bizarre web of potential motives. Suspect 1. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Kaczynski's parents lived in the Chicago suburbs during 1982, and the FBI noted similarities in the meticulous, anti-corporate nature of the crimes. DNA testing was later conducted on the laced bottles, but no conclusive match to Kaczynski was ever made. Suspect 2. Roger Arnold. Arnold was a dock worker in Chicago who possessed potassium cyanide and reportedly spoke about wanting to poison people. Investigators raided his home and found firearms and chemical manuals, but no direct physical link connected him to the specific retail stores. The pressure of the investigation drove Arnold insane. He later shot and killed an innocent man he mistook for the police informant who turned him in. Suspect 3. An inside job. Some investigators theorized that the poisonings occurred inside a distribution warehouse before reaching retail stores. However, because the laced bottles came from 2 separate manufacturing plants, one in Pennsylvania and one in Texas, the tampering almost certainly took place at the retail store level in Chicago. The most terrifying consequence of the Tylenol murders was the wave of copycat crimes that followed. Across America, unstable individuals began tampering with consumer products. Laced Excedrin, poisoned Sudafed, and tainted baby food popped up in grocery stores nationwide. The fear was no longer confined to a single painkiller. It transformed how human beings viewed every sealed product in the supermarket aisle. The Tylenol murders forever altered the relationship between corporations, consumers, and safety standards. Prior to 1982, medicine bottles used simple screw-top caps. You could walk into a store, open a jar, look inside, and put it back without leaving a single trace. In response to the Chicago panic, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration introduced strict federal regulations requiring tamper-evident packaging on all over-the-counter medications and food products. The foil seals, plastic neckbands, and cotton ball barriers we interact with today exist directly because of the victims of 1982. In 1983, the U.S. Congress passed the Tylenol Bill, making product tampering a federal crime punishable by life imprisonment or the death penalty. Against all odds, Tylenol survived as a brand. Johnson & Johnson re-engineered its entire delivery system, replacing loose powder capsules with solid, tamper-resistant caplets that were nearly impossible to pull apart and lace. Yet, despite decades of forensic advancements, modern DNA testing, and dedicated task forces, the Chicago Tylenol murders remain officially unsolved. The mastermind who walked into Chicago pharmacies in the autumn of 1982, placed lethal poison on store shelves, and triggered global panic was never brought to justice. They vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a legacy of fear every time we break a plastic seal. If you were captivated by this deep dive into unsolved crime history, hit the like button, subscribe to Midnight Mysteries, and click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment below. Do you think the killer was a lone psychopath, or did they have a personal vendetta against Johnson & Johnson? This was Midnight Mysteries. See you in the next video.